My parents kicked me out from my pregnant sister's boyfriend when I was just 18. Now they want me to help them. Hey everyone. So about 5 years ago, when I was 18, my parents kicked me out of the house. They believed it was more important for my sister's boyfriend to move in with her than for me to stay. I'm now 23, and I have an older sister, Chloe, who's 4 years older than me. When she was 22, Chloe got pregnant by her boyfriend and had to move back home. She had been working for a few months, but she hadn't saved enough money to raise a baby and live on her own, so she returned to our parents' house. 3 months into her pregnancy, Chloe decided that it would be better for her boyfriend to move in with us too. She felt it was important for the baby's father to be around for proper development. I didn't have any issue with that idea, but our house wasn't exactly spacious, so I thought it was an unreasonable demand. I wasn't sure if our home could accommodate all of us. Initially, I believed my parents would decline her request, but to my shock, they were actually planning to agree with her and kick me out instead. A couple of months after Chloe had moved back, my parents told me that they were planning to have her boyfriend move in as well, and that I would have to give up my room. I was shocked. I hadn't seen this coming at all. I asked where exactly I was supposed to stay in the house, and that's when my parents clarified that they wanted me to leave the house altogether. They said I was 18 and it was time for me to leave the nest. I had decided to take a gap year, so I wasn't attending college at the time, and moving in with my grandparents or friends was an option. But I couldn't understand why I had to move out of my own home. It was my home too, not just my sister's, and her being pregnant didn't give her the right to dictate everything. I tried to fight back, but my parents insisted that I was an adult and had to deal with life on my own. They told me I had no right to feel entitled to live with them anymore, especially when my sister was pregnant and needed her partner by her side. I suggested that Chloe could share her room with her boyfriend, but they told me it wasn't possible because she needed her own space as she got bigger. Her room was small, and having her boyfriend move in would make it too cramped, so she wanted him in a different room. I then suggested that maybe her boyfriend could live in the living room, but apparently he had a back injury, so that wasn't feasible. I was desperate not to leave, so I even suggested living in the living room myself, but they told me that having someone stay in the living room was unseemly. It became very clear to me that they just wanted me gone. I blamed my parents for the way they treated me, but I also thought my sister was being unreasonable and entitled. Not only did she want her boyfriend to move in, but she also wanted a separate room for him, which meant I had to move out even though I wasn't ready. I felt terrible, and we had a huge fight the day they told me to leave. I called them all selfish and said I never wanted to see them again because they were disgusting, horrible people. I was ashamed to be related to them. I packed my things, called a couple of friends, and moved out within 3 days. I spoke to my grandparents, but my mom's parents were a bit skeptical about having me live with them. I didn't blame them. My grandpa was really sick, and my grandma had enough on her plate taking care of him. So I decided to move in with my paternal grandparents. When they heard why I had to leave my parents' house, they were outraged. They gave my parents a piece of their minds and then stopped speaking to them altogether. Even though I had my grandparents and friends by my side, I was very depressed. I had always thought I had a good relationship with my parents and even my sister, so I didn't understand why they were treating me like this. But it all became clear to me the day after I left, when my sister sent me a letter from one of her friends. I still have that letter because it was just so bizarre. The letter explained that the reason she had convinced our parents to kick me out was because of her boyfriend. Apparently he was a bit of a flirt, and they hadn't been in a committed relationship when she got pregnant. They only made things official after she found out she was pregnant, and she was afraid he wasn't fully committed to their relationship. She said she had to fight hard to get him to agree to move in with her and commit to raising the baby, so she didn't want another woman in the house because it would put the entire situation at risk. I couldn't believe why Chloe would want to have a baby with a man like this, since she was obviously very insecure and didn't trust him. The fact that she felt she had to get me to leave the house just so her boyfriend wouldn't be tempted to flirt or hook up with me was just crazy. I had half a mind to text her and tell her that she had no self-respect and that it was pathetic for her to stay with a man like this and even have his baby. But I decided to say nothing. Being with a man like this was punishment enough for her. I wanted nothing to do with her or my family anymore. She had no self-respect or dignity, and since my parents were so easily influenced by her, they clearly showed me where I stood with them. I decided that not speaking to them would be the best course of action, and started trying to move on with my life. I had never been inclined towards academics, which is why I took a gap year to think about what I really wanted to do with my life. I didn't want a typical 9-to-5 job. I know it sounds strange, but I always felt that kind of lifestyle would be too restrictive for me. I'm a self-taught musician. I play both the guitar and drums, and I've been playing since I was 12. During the gap year, I realized that being a musician was what I wanted to do with my life. I knew there wasn't much money in it, but it would make me happy, and that's all I wanted. I thought maybe I'd make it big someday, though I didn't know then that it would actually come true. Well, sort of. Initially, I was only playing small gigs, and money was tough. I relied heavily on my grandparents for financial support, and it took me a long time to afford an apartment. Even then, it was a tiny one that I shared with a roommate. But after a while, I started getting slightly more serious gigs. At the beginning of this year, I auditioned to work with a music producer. I won't name names, but I got the gig. I'll be playing guitar in a couple of songs for a film, and I'm being compensated really well. I've already received some money in advance and managed to move into a better apartment. I'll get the rest after the job is done, and I think I'll be getting even more work with the resume I'm building. Only a few of my friends and my grandparents knew about this. I hadn't even posted anything on social media because I didn't want to talk about it too soon. Nothing is permanent in showbiz anyway. 2 days ago, my family somehow found out where I lived. They showed up at my door, obviously needing my help since I'm doing better in life now, and both my parents have retired. They need someone to support my sister and her kid. I didn't invite them in when they showed up. I was too surprised to do anything but stare. Since I wasn't in a position to speak, they congratulated me and said they were there to make things right, not just because we were family, but because they needed my help. Chloe's boyfriend had walked out on her 2 years ago, and as soon as they found out I was working as a guitarist on a film soundtrack, they knew they had to get in touch. They said Chloe was struggling to keep up with the business she started after her boyfriend left, and both my parents had retired last year, so they needed me to step up and help her out. They hoped I wouldn't turn them away since it had been a long time since we'd spoken, and despite everything that happened, we were still family, so we needed to be there for each other. I found that laughable because they hadn't been there for me at all. In fact, they had done everything possible to make sure they didn't have to be there for me. Now they were only here because Chloe's boyfriend had left, and she didn't have anyone to support her. Apparently, she was getting child support, but it was barely enough. Chloe had been running a flower shop with a friend after her baby was born, but even that wasn't doing well. So they turned to me for help. The situation was so ironic that I couldn't help but laugh, especially because I remembered the letter Chloe sent me the day after I left. She knew all along that she wasn't sure about her relationship with her boyfriend, yet she chose him over maintaining a good relationship with me. And now, look where that got her. I went back into my house, grabbed the letter I had kept all these years, and returned it to Chloe. I told her to read it out loud to our parents so they could understand why they had kicked me out. Chloe turned red in the face when she saw it and refused to read it out, so I took it back from her and read it out loud myself. When I finished, my parents looked shocked and couldn't say a word. Chloe looked down, trying not to meet my eyes. I asked her if she regretted what she did, and she just looked away. I knew she did, and so did our parents. But I wasn't there to hear their apologies. I knew better than that. I just told them they had made their bed and now had to lie in it. Then I wished them well and shut the door on their faces. They haven't contacted me since.